Today, we will discuss an article that was not discussed or covered in the prominent newspapers of India. But this article featured in the papers like Economic Times or Dash of the Nagaland Tribune. Yes, you heard it right. The article is regarding the pending Naga peace talks. Now, what was the heading of this article? The heading of this article was that the NSCN-IM chairman has rejected any kind of truce or unity with the NNPGs, that is the Naga national political groups of Nagaland. Now, this brings us to the question that we finalized a framework agreement with the NSCN in 2015 and followed with it another agreement in 2017, which was called as the agreed position. And the 7 groups under the NNPGs have signed it with India. But the cause of concern is that even after 10 years, that is the agreement was signed in 2015 and today we are living in 2025, even after 10 years, the details of this agreement are not out in open. Both the groups from the Nagaland as well as the central government has been tight-lipped on this issue, and the Nagaland issue still persists. Even so, that the NSCN-IM, which has signed the agreement with India, has in the past said that they will be ready to pick up the arms again against the government of India. Now, through this article, we'll try to understand what is the recent issue between the NSCN-IM and the NNPGs belonging to Nagaland. What is the issue that is plaguing the Naga peace talks and the accord that we have signed in 2015, and what can be the suggested way forward for the same. Let us understand what they are trying to tell. The Nagas have been waiting for the resolution of the decades-long peace talks. Now, let me remind you that these peace talks started way back in 1997 between the center and the various Naga groups. And a framework agreement was reached in 2015 with an agreed position entered into 2017 with the 7 NNPGs, the Naga national political groups, and that of the government of India on one side. But then there is a disunity among the NSCN-IM and that of what we call as the NNPGs. Now, recently also, a few months back, there was this issue in May particularly, where the difference came into the front when Ikato Su left the NSCN-IM and joined the descendants NSCN-IM group, which are basically stationed in Myanmar, led by Ramsan and Ramon. Now, who are these Ramsan and Ramon? These are basically the descendant groups of NSCN-IM who have stationed themselves in Myanmar. They do not believe in the peace process between the government of India and that of Nagaland. They still believe in the separatism and they still believe that Nagaland is not a part of India. So this has been an ongoing issue. Now the conflict today is more deeper when there is a conflict between the NSCN-IM, which has agreed for a framework agreement with the government of India, and that of Naga national political groups that has also entered for an agreement with the government of India in 2017, as we call it as agreed position. But there is a conflict between the NSCN-IM and the NNPGs itself. And this conflict is basically breaking up the Naga unity. Now this brings us to the question that what is the conflict between the two? The NSCN-IM alleges that the NNPGs are willing to dilute their sovereignty because the demand from the NNPGs are different. NNPGs are not adamant on a separate flag or a separate constitution, unlike the NSCN-IM. NSCN-IM has made it very clear that they want a separate flag for Nagaland, and even on some occasions they want a separate constitution, which will imply that they want the concept of shared sovereignty. Now, we do not know the exact things that they want because the details of the agreement have not been out in the open. And it is still to be seen what will happen regarding the same. Then, what is the demand of NNPGs? NNPGs want more devolution of power, whether it is regarding the bicameral legislature, and they also support a political solution within the Indian constitution. So unlike the NSCN-IM, they do not want a separate flag or a constitution. Just think that they want is mere devolution of power. And let me make you one thing very clear. The government of India is also favorable towards the same. The government of India believes that any crisis or any separatist tendency or the insurgent movement in the Northeast can be solved by giving them more autonomy and giving them more devolution of power. And this has been the trend of India. This we have followed with any of the separatist movement that we have seen in the northeastern part, and we have been able to decrease the amount of insurgency from high levels of 1980s and 19s to very less levels today. Only one prominent issue that begins in the northeastern part today is the separatist demand in basically the Nagaland. Now the NNPGs, NSCN-IM is also very important regarding any kind of peace talks, and these NNPGs are also very powerful in the state of Nagaland. Now let us understand what has been the origin of this issue. You might be wondering where this all issue started. So in very brief, let us try to understand where all of this problem started and also understand how this problem can be resolved. We'll see it from the very beginning. This problem started when the British annexed the Assam in 1826, and by 1881, Naga Hills were also a part of the British India. So Naga Hills came under the direct power of Britishers. Now from the very beginning, even before this incident has started, the Naga Club was formed in 1918, and this Naga Club basically opposed the Simon Commission, stating that they have been forcefully integrated into India, and at that time under British India, and they were from that time also, even in the pre-independent times, they were demanding freedom from the British control. This demand continued when Naga National Council under the leadership of Agamu Zamu Fizo, or what we called as AZ Fizo, was formulated. Now due to common understanding, we believe that the integration of Kashmir or Hyderabad or Junagadh was very difficult, but the integration of Nagaland was much more challenging for India. Because this Naga National Council, which was formed under the leadership of AZ Fizo, vehemently opposed any kind of integration with India. They even formulated their own Naga Federal Army. They organized of what we call as a referendum in 1951, wherein the 99% of the population of Nagaland supported an independent Nagaland. They supported an independent Nagaland starting in 1951 itself. They created a Naga federal government and a Naga federal army and launched the armed struggle against any kind of intervention done by India. So the problem is not new. The problem is from the very inception, that is from the independence itself. This problem further increased when we look at the peace efforts. The government of India reached out and started an armed struggle against the Nagaland. A minimal peace was ensured in the year of 1964, but this peace was short-lived. Again, the demand of Nagaland grew in 1967, and this time government of India decided that now we will take a resolute action against the Naga fighting forces, particularly against the Naga Federal Army. By 1967, a Naga mission was established and the peace was abandoned. Ultimately, Indian government has to resolve with what we call as the full force, and it was concluded via what we call as the Shillong Accord. The Shillong Accord was signed in 1975. Now, why I am mentioning the Shillong Accord? Because from here, you will understand one more thing. The Shillong Accord is important because after the Shillong Accord, the violence came to an end. Or the Naga factional groups understood, or the Naga National Council basically agreed that they will not resolve under the violent struggles against the government of India. And after this, there was formation of group which is called as the NSCN, Naga Socialist, the National Socialist Council of Nagaland. NSCN. This was formed when the Naga National Council agreed to enter into Shillong Accord with the government of India in 1975. Disillusioned with the Naga National Council, a new group was formed which is called as NSCN. the National Socialist Council of Nagaland. This was formed in 1980. Later on, these groups, due to their internal difference, also saw what we call as the differentiation, where two groups were made out of it. One group was NSCN-IM and the other group was NSCN-K. These are the two groups that you will see repeatedly in newspapers, and we have signed an agreement in 2015 with this group, that is NSCN-IM. The IM here stand for the leadership, basically Isak Movia, and K here also stand for the leader, which is Khaflang. The Khaflang section has agreed that they will never sign an agreement with the government of India. The 2015 framework agreement was signed by this group, and in 2017 also by the National Naga political groups. The 7 groups that have signed an agreed position in 2017. The present conflict is between them. Both of them have basically signed an agreement with the government of India. They have signed in 2015 and these people have signed in 2017. But both of them differ over how they will interpret their agreement with the government of India. For example, we have seen that the NNPGs do not want a separate constitution or for that matter a separate flag. Rather, they want more devolution of power. And over this issue, this has started. And NSCN-IM is basically hell-bent on a separate flag and a separate constitution for the Nagaland. So we have seen how Nagaland was a problem for the very beginning, how Naga National Council was formed after the Naga Club, how the National Socialist Council of Nagaland has formed, and how it has been divided between IM and Khaflang. Now let us understand what happened further. What is the demand of NSCN-IM? The first demand of NSCN-IM is that of a greater Naga limb. Now this is problematic for India because it will create a federal disturbance in India itself. Because this greater Naga limb, if you can see on the map, this will transgress into the regions of the adjoining states. That is, it will transgress into the region of Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur and Assam. So not only it will create a federal issue, the greater Naga limb is also problematic because the greater Naga limb demands also includes the region which today includes the region of Myanmar. So if we agree to the demand of NSCN-IM to constitute of greater Naga limb, there will be a stiff opposition from the states of India itself. Why will be any state compromising its territories? But then we can do it under Article 3 of the Indian Constitution, which gives us the power to re-alter the boundaries of the state. But it will also create a diplomatic issue for India because the greater Naga limb also includes the territories of Myanmar. So this has been their demand. The talks began in 1997, concluded in 2015 with a framework agreement. However, the details of the agreement were not disclosed by the government or even by the NSCN group. So the talks are basically stuck on the issue of what we call as a separate constitution and a separate flag. Now there are certain things that we can agree to. For example, many states in India have their own flag. Even the armed forces also have their own flag. So there are certain things that we can agree to. For example, we can agree to the concept of flag, raising a notion that these flags should never disrespect the Indian flag. So we can allow for a Nagaland state flag, provided that the Nagaland state's flag will be hoisted all together with that of the Indian flag. And the Indian flag will never be disrespected whenever it is hoisted with the Nagaland flag. So we can give this to them. So what needs to be done? What is the other thing that India can promise? We cannot promise them their own constitution because we do not believe in the concept of shared sovereignty. This is a bone of contention also. So we cannot promise them a new constitution, but we can give them more devolution of power. We can give them their own flag. So let us see what can India do. Appointment of an interlocutor that is acceptable to both the sides, like that of IB officer A.K. Mishra. It is important to understand that there cannot be accord without the NSCN-IM. Let me remind you, NSCN-K has already rejected any kind of agreement with India. The Ramsan faction does not agree with the Indian position. They have stationed themselves in Myanmar. So the group that is important for reaching any kind of conclusion regarding the Nagaland peace talk, we need to keep NSCN-IM on board. Otherwise, the 7 political groups that are operating in Nagaland will not be therefore capable of reaching a deal with India. Then we need to read a common ground regarding NSCN-IM is important. We can give them a bicameral assembly with at least 40 nominated members representing different tribes. Absorption of cadres as local armed forces or in the Indian paramilitary. Setting up autonomous council in Naga dominated areas of the neighboring states such that the demand of greater Naga limb can be justified not by giving them the territories but by accommodating them, giving them autonomous region. That is, in the neighboring areas, hilly areas of neighboring states, what we can guarantee them is we can establish a Naga, a special autonomous council. The use of Naga flag for at least customary event, and repeal of AFSPA. AFSPA, which was even suggested by various commissions, by BP Jeevan Reddy Commission, and what have been established regarding the AFSPA repeal because it has done more harm than it has created the problem or solved the problem with. So these are the some steps that basically deals with more devolution of power such that Nagaland remains an integral part of India, but their conditions and their demands are also well met. So I hope through this video you have a little clarity of what is happening in Nagaland, how Naga National Council came into existence, how Naga Club came into existence, how Nationalist Socialist Council of Nagaland basically came into existence, what was the NSCN-IM and the NSCN-K, the national Naga political groups that are fighting, the 7 political groups, the framework agreement in 2015, the agreed position in 2017, and the recent fighting between them. We've also seen what can be done with regard to the Nagaland issue. So I hope this video brings you some clarity about the Nagaland issue, and now you can follow the same on how this process will develop in the future. Thank you.